Welcome! Today we are making a pop-up fall house. You're going to start with your paper portrait style and fold it up about 1/3 of the way. Make sure your edges are lined up and make a really crisp crease. I used a marker to sharpen up that crease. Then with a ruler, you're going to draw two lines that are the same length. Starting from the fold, because we're going to cut two slits in our paper and we want the slits to be in the middle of our paper, not coming out from an edge. I had to even mine up. One of them was a little bit longer than the other. Then I'll carefully cut those lines and then open my paper to check that I've done it correctly. Yep, this is the piece that's going to fold out. Now, to make it fold out better, I'm going to put it back to its original fold and then fold the little bitty piece toward you. I know there's so much folding here, but this is what makes it pop out. It's going to take a little bit of finagling to get this piece to fold out toward. Now that you have your little pop out folded toward you, it's time to make the house. When you're making the house, you want to make it fit your background. If you make the house too big, it won't be able to stand up. It's going to be kind of wobbly. So I folded my paper in half so that I could only make it as tall as half of the paper. Go ahead and draw your house out. Trace it with a black marker, or really any color of marker. And then start adding some details. I added a little door, some different windows. You can make it match. You can make it, and that would mean being symmetrical, the same on both sides. You can make it asymmetrical. That means not the same. Mine is definitely asymmetrical. I have different windows. I have different types of roof shingles. After I'm done adding most of the details, I'm going to cut my house out. Now, this doesn't mean that I have every single detail done. I just have most of the main ideas finished. And I also cut my door so that my door would open. You could also cut a window so that a window would open, or add a paper so that a window would fold open. Then I added a little bit of color using colored pencils. You can choose what you would like to add color with. I like colored pencils because they add some nice texture when you color with them. One side of my house, I decided to decorate like an abandoned house. There's a spider living up there, and I'll tell you what, that is a gigantic spider. Look at it. It's almost as big as the window. And then on my other side of my house, I'm going to add a few fall decorations. Here's a little pumpkin. And I'm going to attach that to the front of my house later on. You could add really any sort of decorations that you would like. One thing I like to do, even if I cut out my details with the color that I'm using, I like to add a little bit of another kind of media. So I added colored pencils so they aren't just plain orange. Just for the sake of time, I use double stick tape to attach my project together. When you're attaching your house to your background, make sure you attach it where that pop out folds. You want it on or above the fold, otherwise it won't look like a house is standing on the ground. So you can try folding it up and kind of adjust it as you go, and then glue it. The nice thing about using a glue stick, it's not super messy, and you'll be able to readjust it if you need to. Fold it up, check out how it looks so far. Now it's time to add some more details. You can add Halloween themed things for a haunted house or a spooky house. You can add fall themed things. I have a little sheet that gives you some different ideas of items you can add. but you can add pretty much anything you can imagine. You can decide if you want to make these details pop out or if you just want to draw them onto your background. So I'm choosing a few that I want to add that are going to be popping out or popping off of the paper. And then later on I'll add a few details that will just be in the background of my project. Again, I use double stick tape. I added my bat on the roof of my house and I made a little wreath by the door. And then I added my ghost in the background. You could choose to color the background first. That would be fine. And then add your details. It's really up to you. As you color in your background, make sure that you fill in all the white spaces. We don't want any of that white peeking through. We want to cover it all with color. So that could be with colored pencils, markers, crayons. You could be using other paper details that you glue on. Just make sure that every inch of background is covered. And sometimes I use a white colored pencil, if I'm using colored pencils, to blend it together because sometimes it'll leave a little gap and it's hard to fill it in. Have fun creating your background. Now that you've finished coloring in your whole background, it's time for some finishing touches. I opened up my doors and wrote "Boo" inside, traced it with the Sharpie. If you have chosen to create some windows that open or doors, you can go ahead and draw something inside, write something inside. It's really up to you. Now, before we wrap this up, I want to show you one more thing you could add to your yard. You could choose to add a tree. I am going to add a pine tree because pine trees are my absolute favorite. They smell amazing. I just traced out a simple tree. If you look at a pine tree, it's kind of like stacked triangles. And I cut it out. And then I snipped along the edges of my tree to add some details to it so it wasn't just a plain cut out tree. After I got all done snipping those edges, then I just took my fingers and, as you'll see, I ruffle up the edges a little bit. You could add a pine tree, you could add a fall tree that still has leaves, a fall tree that doesn't have leaves. Now I'm making a stand, so I just cut out a little triangle, fold it over my edge. I'm going to attach that to the back of my tree. But do you see how I'm leaving a little piece below my tree here? That's because I need a piece that's going to attach to the ground. So once I've attached it to the back of my tree, I fold up that little piece that's going to attach to the ground. Add my glue or my double stick tape. And then one last snip, and I can glue that or tape that down to my lawn and have a little tree in the yard. I can't wait to see what you create. Have fun!